Welcome back to live coverage of the Apex Gaming Invitational Qualifier as well as RCQ 2 slaughter here. The Caldwell, Ohio home store. I'm Tandy, aka Todd Anderson. This is Ross Merriam. Say hi, Ross.
Hi, Ross.
We got 3 rounds in the books. We got 4th round coming up for you real soon. Ross, who we got on camera right now?
We are going to be featuring some of our highest ranked players in Season 2 of the Apex Gaming Invitational Series, starting with Ryan Hayes on our main feature match. We saw Ryan dispatch Avi Joshi in round 2. That was Murktide against Zori's Hammer. Looked very impressive there. This is our number 1 player on the leaderboard, so they won round 3 as well, so up to 3-0. Looking to make a quick run to that top 8. 2 more wins, and they'll book their ticket there.
Nice.
Not sure what they're up against, but our backup match is number 2 on the leaderboard. That's Brendan Lane playing Burn. He's at 2-1, so a reasonable start, but back against the wall here. Needs to keep winning to make it into that top 8. So if there's time, we will get to him as well. Both these players are qualified already for the Invitational in February, but looking to keep racking up those points because the top 8 on the leaderboard at the end of the season will get a round 1 bye in that tournament. Yep. So definitely still a lot on the line to play for both of them.
Yeah, got to keep up the points. And, you know, we saw the Murktide player play extremely well on camera, so I'm very glad that that's what we're watching this round. So,
yeah, very tight plays from them, and really just had control of the game against Hammer from the beginning, and sequenced it very carefully to make sure that there was no avenue for him to lose control of that game. And that's the kind of stuff you need when you're playing Is It Murktide. A lot of the time you have a very tenuous grasp of the game. As soon as you run out of answers, like one threat can turn the game around for your opponent. So you need to be very crisp and know what cards to answer, know when to answer them. Make sure you're able to sequence to get your threats down efficiently and pressure your opponent while doing so.
Yep. All right. Well, looks like the players are sat down and ready to go. So let's head down to the feature match area, and we'll see if we can get started with Murktide here. We'll see what the opponent's on in just a second.
That looks like Devin Harrison from last round.
Oh, nice.
So looks like that's going to be 5-color creativity playing in the 3-0 bracket. We saw the end of Harrison's matchup against Chris Kirkpatrick on Belcher. This is generally a reasonable matchup for Is It Murktide, but I do think the domain version has more tools. Leyline Binding be able to efficiently answer Murktide Regent, as well as Teferi Time Raveler as a way to stop Murktide and stop those counter spells can be really important for Harrison in this matchup.
Alrighty. Well, the round is starting. The players here are good to go. Jetmir Garden for Devin Harrison, the new Triland. Very strong for these 4 and 5 color decks in the format, allowing for easy and cheap leyline bindings. Spirebluff Canal for Hayes. The passing of the turn has a DRC in hand. I wonder if he has a Spell Pierce hiding out, hoping to counter something on turn 2 like a Wrenn 6. Goes for a Consider. Top card in the tank. Looks like he has a second land, so it'll be interesting to see what he really wants. I did see a Spell Pierce hanging out.
Also has a Ragavan in hand, so really prioritizing holding up that Spell Pierce for Wrenn 6.
Yeah, you just get brutalized by a Wrenn 6 if you play a 1-drop there. Now, though, can play a 1-drop, can play Bobble and Spell Pierce, all on the same turn.
Guaranteeing himself some Surveil value. He's already got instant and sorcery in the graveyard. Bobble's going to be an artifact, and, well, this bolt's going to deal with the DRC, but this does turn on Delirium for future ones, as well as Unholy Heats. So Unholy Heat can potentially take down an Archon of Cruelty later in this game.
All right, decides to leave the card on top. He's going to take a peek at Devin Harrison's deck and then draw a card once the turn is passed. Maybe needs land. Looks like they kept an expressive iteration after binning one originally. End of turn Consider. Listen for
I see
lands.
2 copies of Creativity in Harrison's hand, so might see one of them run out aggressively just to get a counterspell out of Hayes' hand.
You got to be careful. If you go aggressively, just targeting a token, like a creature token all willy-nilly, you get kind of counterfeited by removal, not even necessarily needing counterspells.
Yeah, so maybe a turn 5 play. I imagine this will be some sort of triome that makes blue mana. Perhaps a Ketria or Rogrin.
Xander's Lounge.
Okay,
so the
that's the other option.
Yeah. Ragavan here is fairly threatening. You know, it's obviously a powerful card, generates a lot of mana. It's not nearly as good on turn 3, but when combined with 1 and 2 mana interaction like Spell Pierce and Counterspell, it's good at any point in the game, basically.
Yeah. The mana advantage is still very relevant in a matchup where you want to be deploying your threats aggressively and holding up counter spells. And Haze does have that expressive iteration back too. That's a card that makes you commit mana on your own turn.
All right, back Ryan's way. We'll see how he wants to sequence this turn. Gets in with a Ragavan. We'll see. Harrison gonna go ahead and fetch. Maybe looking to get a Dwarven Mine token to block and trade with the Ragavan. Here comes the Dwarf. We'll see if there's a block or not, or if there's some spell in response before damage.
I think Haze happy to make this trade, surprisingly, with the backup Ragavan. Just wants to take dwarves off the battlefield. I know it's not trading for a full card, but when you limit the amount, they only have so many Dwarven Mines, and they really want to be casting creativity for more than one because of the threat of removal, like you said. So I think limiting them ends up being important.
All right, replays Ragavan and plays Island for turn. Has multiple expressive iteration here. Just kind of waiting to fire those off so he has a bunch of mana untapped. He has the Spell Pierce to protect, but he wants to represent more than one piece of interaction.
Yeah, this is impressive patience here from Ryan Haze.
I see people just fire off expressive iteration like crazy, just like way too early. I like to take my time. Brainstorm-esque.
Yeah. Harrison going for the creativity. Do we see an Unholy Heat? Yeah, there is one in Haze's hand.
Yeah.
So, but might want to fire off the Spell Pierce because Harrison is just making more and more land drops.
No, it's a tough decision. I don't mind the Heat because you can find another removal spell off expressive iteration and kind of do the same thing next turn. This is where the Dwarven Mine part of the deck really starts to falter and where you really miss those treasure tokens and clue tokens and crab tokens that the deck used to play.
And now here's the Spell Pierce on the Leyline Binding. So Haze getting paid off for using the Unholy Heat. Actually drew another Heat for turn. Could potentially fire off an Ice here for a free card, but I think I'd rather just get one of these iterations cast.
Maybe. I kind of like the Ice.
You really want to find a counterspell here. So
That's
I guess
true.
with no creatures on the battlefield, the Unholy Heat is probably good against another creativity. Instead we see 2 lands, the Strand goes to the bottom, Island gets played. I think it was a Lightning Bolt was the other card.
Yeah, I think so
Not a great iteration.
Well, you do have a creature checked, so it's not that bad.
Yeah. You have 2 creatures checked with the treasure, so even if Harrison was able to put multiple tokens onto the battlefield here, has another creativity in hand, but doesn't have anything to target.
Yep. A Leyline Binding going to come down here. Ryan Hayes actually drew Counterspell for a turn. It'll be interesting to see if he chooses to let the Ragavan go or not. Going to go ahead and Counterspell that and keeps the pressure on, keeps the mana generation, can now expressive iteration post-combat and maybe find another threat or Counterspell or both.
Yeah, at this point you've got a little bit, some things covered with the removal, so keeping your pressure on the battlefield is important. And another just pile of removal here for Haze. Probably just puts Heat in hand and then fires up a bolt at Harrison's face.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Or maybe you want to back up Ragavan in case the other one dies. That's fine too.
Yeah.
So still going to fire the bolt to the face because that's the only one you can really cast. That's going to drop Harrison to 8.
With another bolt in hand, though, it's getting dangerous.
Yeah. And, you got to fetch to make more dwarves, so...
Oh, he's going to get paid off on the backup Ragavan. Fire Ice to draw for Harrison. He's going to probably cast that now and blow up the spot. Could also go for Ice and look for a Dwarven Mine if he thinks that this might be a spot where he could resolve a creativity for 1.
Interesting. He waited on both Leyline Bindings until Haze was untapped, and it punished him because Haze drew the counterspell for turn. This time he's main facing it, and it's going to punish him because Haze has the other Ragavan.
Yeah. Well, DRC's drawn for the turn, too. You have to imagine this Ragavan's going to get dashed. That'll protect it from a Ren 6 peel. It also just gets in 2 damage immediately, which is just closing the game so quickly with the bolt in hand and the DRC.
Yeah. Haze threatening to end the game on his next turn.
Here's a question. Does the DRC have Delirium? It's turn 20. If the answer is no, we got a problem.
He had Delirium on turn 1.
That's fair.
Or turn 2.
It was turn 2. That's right.
Yeah.
All
I think
right.
that was a Beseiju off the top for Harrison, which is
Nothing.
Yeah, you can't Beseiju your own stuff. Otherwise, you could potentially try to turn one of his lands into a Dwarven Mine and then creativity. Oh, no, I think it was Archon, actually. No, yeah, we have 7 mana exactly.
Here comes an attack for 5. Even if Ryan didn't have the Bolt in hand, this means all the fetch lands are turned off. It just doesn't really.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Finish it with your own card.
Oh, yeah.
Got it. That always feels good, right?
Yeah, don't even have to show them the bolt.
Yeah.
I
like showing them the bolt anyway, just to let them know that I had it.
No. I want my opponent to be a little bit tilted that I like hit the perfect card to kill them and deny them an extra turn.
I just like to thoroughly showcase how dominated my opponent is. That's my goal.
Yeah, if it was game 3, then sure. But if there's more match to play, I want them to just be that little bit of extra tilted.
All right, Murktide up a game here. I'm going to let Ross look over the sideboards here and give us his expert analysis on what's going to come in, what's going to go out. Murktide, though, against creativity, I think it's somewhat favored for Murktide. The creativity deck just kind of taps out a lot, and that just is conducive for Spell Pierce and Counterspell to be successful.
This is definitely the style of matchup that Murktide likes to play against. But like I said, good tools from Harrison's side. We've got the Teferis in the main. We've got the Leyline Bindings in the sideboard, though. We see 2 Blossoming Calm, 2 Beseiju Who Endures, 1 Emrakul the Aeon's Torn, 2 Flusterstorm, 1 Iona Shield of Emeria, 1 Spell Pierce, 1 Sundering Titan, 3 Turn the Earth, 2 Veil of Summer. So the Veils are great.
Yeah.
I think the Flusterstorms are good too.
Agreed.
To win these counter wars. I am not a fan of anything else, I think, though. I'm intrigued by the Iona. If you Iona on red, they can still play counter spells in Murktide Regents. You could also Iona on blue and just kind of force them to need multiple burn spells to deal with it.
Yeah, I'm just not super into getting Odoar or Brazen Borrowed, so I would just not bring in Iona. Like, red is the dominant color in the deck, but blue has a couple answers to it. And the Archon of Cruelties, if you get 1 Archon of Cruelty activation, it's almost always game over. It's so powerful.
Archon is really good. I'm leaning with you, but I would think about it. But just the Veils and Flusterstorms, nice cheap counters to force through your creativity. So those are going to be great for Harrison. As for Hayes, I see we have 1 Jace the Mind Sculptor, 2 Unlicensed Hearse, 2 Mystical Dispute, 2 Dress Down, 2 Subtlety, 1 Brazen Borrower, 2 Brotherhood's End, 1 Dead Gone, and 2 Flusterstorm. I like the Flusterstorms to fight these counter wars. I'm not sure how much maybe I want Dead Gone over other removal because it can bounce. Maybe it's better than Bolt because it can bounce an Archon if you need it to.
Maybe. I mean, they both do similar things. I wouldn't be surprised if Dead Gone just stayed in the sideboard. Like, the versatility of Bolt to go upstairs when you're actually applying pressure is just the X factor for, is it tempo decks, you know?
Yeah. That's another close one. I could see it going either way.
Yeah.
I like the Brazen Borrower as a flash threat, so you don't have to commit mana on your own turn. Can also potentially bounce an Archon.
It's also good against Fable the Mirror Breaker. Bouncing that token actually just seems really good.
And I like Jace. I think this is a matchup that could go long. The creativity deck has a lot of interaction, so I like having a heavy hitter there.
All right, looks like both players here are about ready to start game number 2. Your creativity player on the right is going to be on the play. Devin Harrison, 3-0. Ryan Hayes, 3-0 with Murktide.
Notably, Hayes is on a list that has no Archmage's Charm, but 2 main deck Blood Moon. Blood Moon, particularly good card against creativity because it shuts down Dwarven Mine and really messes with their stretched mana base.
It's weird because they're like, almost mono red or whatever with the mana. But Blood Moon just shuts off all the utility lands and shuts off the splashes.
And most of their spells are not red.
Yeah. I also don't think bringing in Beseiju in high numbers is like a winning strategy against them because they just have so few targets. But Blood Moon is just this unique card that if you don't answer, you're probably just dead.
Yeah, you do have Leyline Binding, but you have to have Binding with the mana up to float in response. And then then once the Blood Moon comes in, you only have the 1 type, so you need 5 mana up.
Yeah.
And white mana to float, so that's just tough to be able to answer with a Binding.
All right. No play for either player on 1. That leads me to believe that Hayes probably has a Spell Pierce or something similar to protect from a Brennan 6. Yeah. Harrison does have the Ren. We'll see if he goes forward or maybe waits a turn to try to get Spell Pierce advantage.
Yeah, Harrison with a Pierce in hand, so it has the ability to wait. Even has a Fire Ice here that could kill a creature. Could also tap a land on the end step to limit Hayes' ability to interact.
This is a moments before disaster situation, Ross. We're gonna play a Dragon Race Channeler, and then it's gonna get eaten by a Ren 6. It's just happening. It's a foregone conclusion. And he, poor guy, didn't even know it yet. All right, DRC is the play. We'll see if Harrison has the Spell Pierce and... Ooh, maybe we can get Delirium before that happens, though.
Well, I think we're going to be responding to this trigger knowing that you're a little too close to Delirium respond with the Fire Ice, which I like.
Yeah, me too. You know, not getting greedy with the Ren. It just ticks up and lets you get land, so it's not vulnerable to a Dash Ragavan.
Yeah, or a Bolt or an Unholy Heat without Delirium.
Yeah.
You know, Ren is so important that I want to... As attractive as minusing it and dealing with a creature kind of for free is, it's so important to have around in this deck that I like plussing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the same situation people were in with Chandra Torch of Defiance. Like,
Right.
you know, it was nice to be able to not use a spell on a creature, but you made your Chandra so vulnerable. So when you just +2 for mana and played a Harness Lightning, you felt much better.
I think +2 for mana was the sign that I lost.
Yep.
Right? When your opponent makes mana with Chandra, it's usually game.
Right. Hayes choosing not to fight over this Dragon's Rage Channeler.
Well, maybe doesn't have the Pierce. Maybe just doesn't want to fight over it. You know, maybe has more threats on lined
I
up.
see a Ledger Shredder. I see an Iteration. I see a Counterspell, I think.
Yeah, I saw 2 Spell Pierce too, I think, actually.
Yeah, I think it's 2 Spell Pierce. So even with 2 of them, doesn't fight over it, which once again proves to be the correct decision. This Ren isn't going to get forced through with a Pierce, but you at least gave it your best shot.
Both players really doing a nice dance around each other's counter spells. I think both players actually just playing correctly, but Devin Harrison going to come out on top here, getting this Ren 6 down.
Possible. Hayes could have played even more conservatively by not running out the DRC, but you had the Bauble too. You want to get the Surveil.
Yeah.
You need to make your land drops, so I can't fault him for that, you know.
All right, Ren comes down. Now, Harrison's at a very precarious life total already, though, just because fetch shock twice and another fetch land to boot. Should be all the way down to 13. Back Hayes' way. The Ren ticks up and gets a land back. That's going to turn on some Dwarven Mines over the next couple turns, unless Ryan Hayes has an Unholy Heat right now.
Yeah. I think it's 2 fetch lands, a Fable, and a Creativity in hand for Harrison. Normally that Fable would be great here, but I think it's going to eat a Spell Pierce. Maybe we'll see if Harrison has the patience to do... It would be doing nothing this turn, because you just drew another land.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do nothing this turn, you might run afoul of a counterspell, which is also in Hayes' hand. So at this point, it's sort of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation for Harrison.
Just play your spells, you know?
Yeah, just make him have it.
Yep. All right, here comes Fable.
Yeah.
Ryan Hayes. Probably going to counter it. We got to fetch. We got to Spell Pierce.
And if you're Hayes, you're like, please don't, Spell Pierce me or Flesh Restore me or Veil me. And when you see this counter work, you're super happy.
Right, because the fetch line represents a host of 1-mana spells that can bury you in that spot.
Yeah, and now Harrison just has a hand with a bunch of lands and a really expensive sorcery that's going to eat a counterspell.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a question of how fast we can grow this Shredder to get this Ren down. Don't know what else is in Hayes' hand.
Well, just drew Blood Moon. How's that one? Think you just jam that one?
Hard one to jam because we can make a dwarf in response. So you leave your...
That's true. We can make a dwarf in response. We can also fetch a white source and play Leyline Binding in response. Or float a white and then play Leyline Binding.
Well, after the Blood Moon resolves, Binding costs 5.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
All
you need to have 5 mana up and stuff. So I think Hayes is going to be patient here and wait one more turn so that he can, if he finds more lands, so potentially on 5 mana, Blood Moon with Counterspell up.
Mm-hmm.
Finds no lands off of this iteration. Does he have another in hand?
I believe he does. I believe he has a Delta in hand, so
Yeah.
he could... The problem is this iteration is not getting a free card. The land is the free card that he wanted so that he could curve out and not have to commit more mana this turn.
So now it's just an expensive Anticipate.
Yeah, I doubt that it'll be cast here, so...
Yeah, he's moving it all the way over. And if you're Harrison, that's a sign that there's a counterspell here, unless he doesn't have the land. Is
pretty
Blood
sure
Moon
he's got
counterspell iteration? He took iteration off of it, not the Ragavan, right? Maybe he took Ragavan to try to generate mana.
Pretty sure I could replicate the Art of Pluto Delta in my sleep.
Yeah, there is a Delta, so does have land 4, but the fact that he is not casting this iteration for a free card is assigned to Harrison that he does have a counterspell.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be reactive something or another because the Ledger Shredder is so incentivized to play 2 spells. You know, you get to loot away dead cards, extra lands, bad removal, whatever.
This Ledger Shredder went upstairs?
I guess
so. Yeah, because the Wrens didn't get ticked out. So that's another fetch. So we're at, what, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? Yeah, we're at 11 for Harrison.
Now we can...
Dwarven Mine off the top.
Interesting he didn't fetch a Dwarven Mine. Now he's kind of leaving himself vulnerable, not only to counterspell, but to removal. Unless he's just planning on not going for it for a while.
If you're Harrison, your thinking is, I'm always going to have a fetch land in play. If I know I'm going to go for it next turn, I can fetch for 1, fetch on my turn, have 2, and that's the number I want. And you don't want to expose them early unnecessarily.
All right, Harrison content to just soak another peck from the bird.
Wisely not fetching on end step there. He knows there's a card on bottom that's not a land. He wants to draw a land, doesn't want to thin his deck at all. Because he wants to play that Blood Moon with Counterspell up. Does have another iteration here. I expect we'll see that one get cast. There it is. There's the 5th land.
Yep, so, has DRC too, so it can go land, fetch, DRC, hold up Counterspell. Gets the trigger from Ledger Shredder. Pretty solid turn.
Yep. Just do a little fetch shocking.
Yeah, your life total not a huge issue when you're playing against creativity. If you're winning or losing, it's by a lot.
Okay, playing more
insulation.
Wants to hold up Counterspell and a removal spell.
Yep.
Hayes has been very patient all throughout this match, so not surprising there. Maybe we're the ones getting a little over aggressive.
Maybe.
Harrison fetches to 10. We'll see if this one gets a Dwarven Mine, because you're kind of running out of time to fire this creativity off.
Well, again, no extra pressure from Hayes means that you can just wait. It's just pecking you, you know? Bark, bark.
It also might be time to just, get an army of dwarves down, because you're only taking 1 from the Shredder. You can race back.
Well, and the Shredder's not even attacking you. It's attacking the Wren, so...
Yeah. That is another land from Harrison. An unfortunate flood. Ooh. Main phase fetch tells me that I think this creativity is getting fired off.
Yeah, one way or another, it's getting fired off. Once this happens, though, Hayes basically gets to unlock his mana for the rest of the game until he draws another counterspell. And with that Blood Moon, it could just be lights out. We'll see how Hayes wants to play it. Dwarf number 2.
Got sorcery, artifact, creature, land, instant. So Delirium for Hayes, and he does have that Unholy Heat. So we might see the counterspell here, and then untap, play DRC, Unholy Heat the Wren, and then get a loot and a Surveil to try to find one more counterspell to kind of lock it up. Though you might not even need that, given how weak Harrison's hand is.
Now, we can also EOT Unholy Heat on the Renin 6 to get a Connive trigger from the Ledger Shredder. That's an option.
Yeah, deciding to do that. That just costs him a little bit of life. Then next turn we could go Blood Moon and DRC. A lot of options here.
DRC Blood Moon seems like a nice sequence. Now, another removal spell would clear up the last of the dwarfs, and then potentially locking Harrison out of being able to creativity or transmogrify ever again.
Yeah. Deciding not to go after the Wren with the removal spell here, instead dealing with a dwarf. So saying, you know what, I think my creatures will be able to take that Wren out. Okay.
Okay.
Discards the DRC, wants to keep the Consider that he drew to dig for more answers.
Yeah, maybe just wants another removal spell.
Flusterstorm.
Yeah, and with the Consider, it can actually juice it up a little bit, so it's a little bit better than a Spell Pierce, which might be good enough depending on the situation.
Well, Harrison on 6 lands right now will make a 7th land drop for sure next turn. That means it can pay for a Flusterstorm for 3 on a creativity for X equals 1.
Mm-hmm.
So even with the Consider, that wouldn't be enough. Yeah, finally time for the Moon.
The Moon?
So Harrison going to be limited to just that one dwarf.
All right, let's see where this 2-point attack goes. My guess is face. We're like past the point where caring about Wren matters.
Well, the Wren emblem can mean more creativities from the graveyard. So
sure,
you do want to stop that, I would think.
Finds a bolt, but luckily for Hayes,
yeah,
Ledger Shredder just grew.
The very first turn where Shredder has 4 toughness, we find a bolt off the top. If only it was an unholy heat. We've got land, instant, sorcery, enchantment.
All right, I like this play a lot from Harrison.
Oh,
This
gonna
bolt
bolt
here,
and ping.
and then and then the ping will kill it. Now Hayes can go consider Flusterstorm my own consider and try to connive into a spell. It's probably not worth.
Definitely not. And he discarded the DRC to that connive, so now there's no pressure from Hayes.
Yeah, I could easily draw some more though. You know, just consider is a versatile card, and the DRC is pretty static in what it can do or what it can be.
A single Murktide Regent will do.
All right, keeps the card. Probably
It's a Murktide Regent.
Some big boy. Found another Murktide Regent too, I think, but can only
Murktide
get
Regent's
one.
just like, I have been summoned.
You rang?
And now I think it's creativity or bust.
Well, yeah.
Or Leyline Binding. No, Leyline Binding, you
Shut
can't cast
down.
Wings of the Moon. Yeah, it's creativity or bust or transmog. There's one.
All right,
That
Ren and
is
six
an
is a draw.
uncastable Ren and 6.
Looks like that's going to do it. So well navigated here by Ryan Hayes. Going to take this down 2-0 and be 4-0, and that much closer to being able to draw into the top 8. If he wins next round, you have to imagine all the 5-0s can double draw to the top 8. And
Yeah.
lock up that elimination slot and a hefty amount of cash.
Yeah, we should have 2 to 3 players at 5-0. So if there's 3, one will get paired down and have to play, but
Right.
likely be able to lose and draw.
The Spite Ren minus, deal you 1, and then show you a handful of useless cards. Thanks, Blood Moon.
Devin Harrison just trying to get his time on camera. Love this attack.
Sometimes it's not about what's right or wrong. Sometimes it's about what feels right.
Yeah, it's about sending a message.
I was letting you say that. All right. We're going to Dwarven Mine, the Murktide region. It's going to
Yeah.
go to the graveyard with all the rest of his permanents. That's a pretty powerful land. It obliterates the whole side of the board. Just kidding. 2-0 for the Murktide player, 4-0 in record, and number 1 on the leaderboard. So well played and well navigated. That game looked like, honestly, masterclass for the Izzet Murktide player.
Yeah, Ryan Hayes showing why he is number 1 on the leaderboard, piloting one of the best decks in Modern almost effortlessly through this field.
Draws from opponent weren't so hot, but, you know,